Hi, my name is Alex Leman. Welcome to Shadow Whispers, where love speaks softer than a whisper but echoes through the heart. This is a place for those who don't just crave romance, but want to feel every breath between the lines. Here, love isn't always gentle, but it's always real. Some stories end in forever. Some never should have begun, but each one leaves a mark. So settle into the quiet, open your heart, and let the story begin. Love Beneath the Willow Bridge. Chapter 1. Lanterns over Blackwater. Catch it, or the harbor'll eat it. Evelyn Marrow shouted as a paper lantern slipped from a dockhand's fingers and skated toward the water. Jonah Hale lunged, boots skidding across the rain-slick planks, and trapped the lantern against his chest a breath before the tide licked the pier. The crowd cheered, brass band blaring, stars and stripes off-key. Jonah straightened, meeting Evelyn's bright green eyes for the first time. "Nice save, cartographer," she said, brushing wet hair from her cheek. "Would have been nicer if I'd kept my footing," he admitted, glancing at his mud-spattered trousers. She laughed, the sound quick and warm, and for a heartbeat the foghorn's mournful call seemed to hush in deference. Blackwater, Washington, lay draped in midsummer mist, its wood-frame storefronts glowing under strings of crimson lanterns. Fishermen's children darted between barrels of herring, while their parents traded rumors of an emerald brooch lost at sea decades ago, jewelry said to surface whenever storms or scandals brewed. Jonah overheard fragments, barnacle-crusted, cursed, reward-posted. He tucked the detail away like a coordinate on an unfinished map. His mind always chased patterns. Her smile, however, was a delightful anomaly he couldn't chart. Evelyn wiped seawater from the lantern's glass and passed it back to the dockhand. "You draw maps, right?" "I sell stories," she said, gesturing toward the ramshackle bookstall she'd erected beside the bandstand. Leather-bound journals, penny thrillers, a single gilded volume labeled Blackwater Legends balanced beneath a rock. "Trade you a tale for a compass lesson?" she offered. Jonah, surprised, nodded. "I prefer stories with endings," he warned, "but my compass is at your service." Wind shifted, carrying the distant clang of a buoy and the faint smell of cedar smoke. Fireworks hissed to life behind them, scattering sparks across the river like molten confetti. As colors burst overhead, a gunshot cracked from the direction of the lighthouse cliff. The revelers froze, fireworks sputtering into silence. Sheriff Amos Pike pushed through the crowd, holster unlatched. "Show's over, folks. Lanterns out," he barked. Yet lanterns flared brighter instead. Someone had upended a crate of kerosene. Evelyn's guardian, stern Mr. Whitlock, seized her arm. "Inside now," he hissed, but she shook him off. "Someone's hurt," she argued. Whitlock's expression flickered, fear or guilt, before he melted into the alarmed crowd. Jonah followed the sheriff up the hill path. Evelyn close behind despite his protest. Moonlight revealed fresh footprints in the clay, leading to the old supply shed perched above the crashing surf. The door hung open. Inside, they found a velvet jewelry box, empty but for a scrap of sea-stained ribbon. Jonah's pulse hammered. The ribbon's emerald hue matched the lost brooch's legend. Sheriff Pike radioed for deputies, yet static drowned his orders. Evelyn's gaze landed on Jonah's trembling hands. "You believe curses?" she whispered. "I believe coincidences map poorly," he replied. Thunder rumbled, although the sky stayed clear, as if the ocean itself grumbled at secrets dug from its depths. Evelyn reached past him, pocketing the ribbon. "Then, let's draw a better map," she said, voice shaking with excitement or dread, he couldn't tell. Red lanterns flickered below like restless fireflies, while rumors spread faster than the smoke from spent fireworks. Some swore they'd seen a figure sprint across the lighthouse catwalk. Others claimed the ghost of Captain Marrow, Evelyn's long-dead uncle, guarded his treasure again. Jonah's logical mind rebelled, but his heart raced at the possibility that fate had just tethered him to this fearless bookseller. Back on the pier, the band resumed an uneasy waltz. Jonah escorted Evelyn to her stall, where Whitlock waited, pale and tight-lipped. "Your father would forbid this nonsense," he warned. "My father isn't here to forbid anything," she snapped, voice brittle as sea glass. Whitlock's glare shifted to Jonah. Cartographers should mind their coordinates. Evelyn caught Jonah's sleeve before he could retreat. 8 o'clock tomorrow, she whispered. "Bring your compass. I'll bring the ribbon." He hesitated, then nodded. Across the inlet, the lighthouse lamp swept a cold arc over dark water, as if measuring the distance between two possible futures. He felt the pull already, a current stronger than reason, drawing him toward a girl who collected legends and a mystery that refused to stay buried. As midnight approached, the final lantern slipped from its hook and drifted skyward, flame glowing against the fog like a solitary promise. Beneath it, Jonah traced invisible lines from the shed to the shoreline, from his heart to hers, unaware that the map forming in his thoughts would soon redraw every boundary he trusted, and that one misplaced step could pull them both into waters too deep to chart. Chapter 2. Letters that never learned to swim. "Your compass is late," Evelyn murmured, leaning across the library counter as rain hammered cedar shingles overhead. Jonah arrived breathless, coat dripping, compass clutched like contraband. He passed it to her, heart racing faster than the clock's uneven tick. Outside, Blackwater's main street blurred behind silver curtains. Inside, the smell of wet wool mingled with candle wax and dusty parchment. Evelyn flipped the compass open. The needle spun, paused, then pointed not north but toward Jonah. She raised a brow. "Undisciplined equipment?" He swallowed. "Or unspoken direction," he managed. She slipped the emerald ribbon from her notebook and laid it beside the compass. Rain rattled the windows as if urging haste. They settled at a corner table stacked with nautical charts. Evelyn spread blank stationery, ink, and the ledger of Blackwater legends. "A story for a lesson," she reminded him. Jonah drew the edge of a map, showing tidal flows around the lighthouse cliff. "Currents curl back on themselves here," he said, tapping the page. "Anything dropped there drifts beneath town before the sea spits it out days later." Evelyn's eyes widened. "Including brooches," she whispered. The library's door banged open. Spencer Hale strode in, cheeks flushed, gold watch chain gleaming. Jonah stiffened. His older brother's grin held too many teeth. "Borrowing romance novels now?" Spencer teased. "Mother would be thrilled." Evelyn met his gaze steadily. "We stock tragedies too," she replied. Spencer's smile thinned. He produced a damp envelope and he waved it. "Telegraph from the Seattle Maritime Bureau," he announced. "They found Father's old cargo manifest." Jonah's pulse spiked. Their father's ruin still cast long shadows. Before Jonah could speak, Spencer tucked the envelope into his coat and tipped his hat. "Family affairs," he said, "better kept dry." Raindrops hissed as he vanished. Evelyn exhaled. "He unsettles you." Jonah nodded, ashamed of the tremor. "Spencer collects secrets the way barnacles collect ships." He pushed worry aside. "Let's write," he said. They drafted a letter addressed to Captain Marrow, Evelyn's long-dead uncle, asking where the brooch lay. It was a joke, yet each stroke felt electric, as though the pen tapped a live wire beneath the town. They sealed the letter inside a glass bottle and hurried to the harbor. Dusk bled lavender across the sky. Gulls wheeled like scraps of torn paper. Evelyn's cloak snapped in the wind as she perched on a slick piling. "Ready?" Jonah asked. She kissed the bottle's rim and let it fall. It splashed, caught the current, and vanished under rippling mercury. 3 nights later, Evelyn waited in her attic loft, candles guttering. Upstairs, beams creaked with every gust. Downstairs, Whitlock paced, heavy steps echoing disapproval. On her desk lay 3 envelopes, one from Jonah describing tidal anomalies, one from a stranger signed simply M, and one she dared not open, Spencer's handwriting. She broke the stranger's seal first. Inside, a single sentence in elegant script. "The brooch guards more than gold. Follow the lantern that sinks instead of sails." Goosebumps prickled her arms. She opened Spencer's letter next. It contained a debt notice. Whitlock had mortgaged the bookstore, repayment due in 30 days, or ownership would pass to Hale & Co. Her breath caught. Downstairs, Whitlock's cough sounded like a verdict. At dawn, Evelyn sprinted to Jonah's workshop. He stared at the debt notice, jaw clenched. "Spencer set this trap," he said. "He'll call the loan unless we give him the brooch," Evelyn guessed. Jonah nodded. "He thinks Treasure will bail out Hale debts." He paced among sextants and ink-stained rags. Outside, fog swallowed the docks. Only the lighthouse beam pierced the gray. Sudden pounding rattled the door. Sheriff Pike entered, hat dripping. "Storm swept something strange ashore," he said. "Found it tangled in kelp by the ferry slip." He produced Evelyn's bottle, cracked but intact, letter missing. Inside floated a single camellia petal, white, unblemished despite the sea. Evelyn's voice faltered. "Camellias don't grow here." Jonah met her gaze. "Spencer brought seeds from Georgia last year," he whispered. A thunderclap rocked the workshop. Pike tipped his hat. "Whatever game you two play, play it fast. The tide's turning ugly." He left, door slamming like a gavel. Evelyn traced the petal's silk edge. "A challenge," she murmured. Jonah's temples pounded with possibilities. "Lantern that sinks," he repeated. "The harbor festival resumes tomorrow. We could rig a lantern to dive, trace the current, intercept Spencer." Evelyn's eyes flashed. "A submerged waltz," she said, half laugh, half dare. Night fell again upon Blackwater, thick with resinous pine and ozone. Jonah drafted coordinates onto oilskin while Evelyn penned a new letter. This one addressed to Spencer. "Meet us where the water forgets to rise, or the story your gold can't buy will surface for every tongue in town." She sealed it with the emerald ribbon and sent a messenger boy toward the Hale estate. As lightning forked beyond the inlet, they stood shoulder to shoulder on the pier. Lantern light reflected in puddles like scattered constellations. Evelyn reached for Jonah's hand. "If letters can swim," she whispered, "perhaps hearts can fly." He squeezed her fingers, though fear tugged at him like undertow. Somewhere beneath their feet, unseen currents carried both promise and peril, and Blackwater's fog listened, ready to erase any boundary between legend and truth. Chapter 3. Rail Spikes at Sunset. "Step away from the track, Evelyn," Spencer warned, revolver gleaming like an extra sun in the russet light. She did not budge. Trains thundered past Blackwater only twice a day. This evening's freight was minutes out, and the rails beneath her boots trembled with its approach. Jonah arrived breathless on the service road, toolbox in hand, copper hair whipped by a dry, pine-scented wind. He saw Spencer, saw the gun, and felt every childhood rivalry ignite like spilled lamp oil. Evelyn's voice carried over the rattling spikes Jonah had been replacing. "You want the brooch," she called. "Fine. Trade me Whitlock's debt note." Spencer's laughter was brittle. "Debt is leverage, dear cousin in spirit. I'd sooner trade my pulse." The sun draped the valley in molten orange, glazing the parallel steel lines until they seemed to lead straight into fire. Far off, a locomotive whistle mourned like a wolf denied the moon. Jonah stepped onto the ballast, eyes on Spencer. "Put the pistol away. You won't shoot before the train arrives. You need witnesses clean of powder smoke." Spencer's grin faltered at the precision of the accusation. Evelyn caught Jonah's sleeve. "He stole Father's cargo manifest," she whispered. Jonah nodded, "and forged half the ledger." His certainty startled her. "How?" "Railroads teach pattern," he said, never dropping Spencer from his sights. "His handwriting jerks at 90 degrees, same as survey stakes he hammered crooked near the old tunnel. A hot gust carried coal dust from the western ridge. The track hummed louder. Spencer cocked the hammer. "Either of you move, and Blackwater hosts a tragic double funeral." Jonah knelt, seemingly surrendering the toolbox, but his fingers brushed the railhead, remembering a trick older workers used to test vibration. He judged 40 seconds before the train burst from the curve. Within those seconds, Evelyn felt her world contract to heartbeats and heat haze. She pictured the emerald brooch glinting beneath gray waves, and wondered if curses preferred blood debts paid in pairs. Jonah's mind raced through coordinates and timing tables. A plan sparked, wild but viable. He met her gaze, a silent compass needle finding north. "Spencer," Jonah shouted over the rising clatter. "Gold won't cover what Hale and Comer's owes after tonight." I mailed copies of the real ledger to the county seat. A lie, but Spencer paled. Rage cracked his composure. He lifted the gun toward Jonah. That motion tipped his balance on loose ballast. Evelyn lunged, shoving Spencer's arm as the first boxcar roared past. The shot exploded harmlessly into cedar sky. Gunmetal flashed from his grip and vanished between wheels, ringing against the track like a bell tolling his misfortune. Dust and grit blinded them. Spencer stumbled back, pinned by the onrush of iron machinery. Jonah seized Evelyn's hand and dove across the service ditch in an instant of shared breath and terror. Air whooshed, warm and furious, shaking rib cages and resolve alike. When the final caboose clanged by, evening lay shattered, the sun a bleeding ember on the horizon. Spencer knelt, empty-handed, staring at streaks of grease on his silk vest. Noise still echoed in their bones. He looked, finally, like a man who feared consequences. Evelyn stood, brushing gravel from her skirt. "What now?" she asked quietly. Jonah opened the toolbox, revealing a rusted steel spike wrapped in Whitlock's mortgage note. Spencer's eyes widened. "You broke into my study." Jonah cut him off. "I retrieved what never belonged to you." He unwrapped the paper, tore it once, twice, again, until crumbs of debt scattered like dark snow. Evelyn exhaled, a sound part relief, part mourning for innocence finally shed. Sirens wailed from town. Sheriff Pike's wagon creaked up the grade. Twilight cooled the rails, leaving ghost heat wavering above them. Spencer rose, dusted his knees, and offered no fight as iron cuffs clicked around his wrists. Yet his final glance carried a promise of storms unmet. Pike loaded him into the wagon, then turned to Jonah and Evelyn. "Trains keep schedule," the sheriff said, voice gravelly as the road. "Hearts don't. Make yours worth the delay." He tipped his hat and drove off, leaving the couple alone amid creosote scent and cricket song. The sky shifted to velvet blue, streaked by lingering gold. Jonah pressed his forehead to Evelyn's, both trembling, tasting soot and possibility. "The track's clear," he whispered. For now, she answered, fingers tracing the pulse at his throat like mapping new territory. Far down the line, a lantern dangled from a switch stand, swaying in gentle rhythm, casting twin shadows that merged and parted. Two silhouettes balanced above an uncertain horizon, daring the night to redraw their path. Chapter 4. Telegram. Never sent, snow began to fall. The night Whitlock announced Evelyn's engagement to Senator Alden Reeves, a widower twice her age whose fortune promised to erase every lingering Caldwell debt. He broke the news over brandy in the bookstore's back room, eyes gleaming behind wire-rimmed spectacles. Evelyn listened, numb, until the wind hurled sleet against the shutters like pebbles flung in protest. Whitlock mistook her silence for acquiescence. He failed to notice Jonah's shadow outside the frosted pane, fists clenched, breath fogging the glass with frantic plans he could not yet voice. At dawn, Jonah found Dr. Hiram Bell brewing coffee thick as tar in his surgery. The old physician studied the younger man's wild expression and wordlessly unlocked a cabinet lined with brown bottles. Chloral hydrate, Bell murmured, measuring drops into a vial. 3 spoonfuls will mimic death 12 hours at most. Any longer, her heart may forget its duty. Jonah's hands shook as he pocketed the vial beside a folded telegram form. He intended to warn Evelyn, to beg her to meet him at the Gunnison rail tunnel once she woke, far beyond Whitlock's reach. The lines stretched clear to Seattle. One message could outrun every scheme. He paid the clerk at Blackwater Station, watched the key clatter the words, "Wait for me," by the western portal sunset. Tomorrow. J.H., and felt hope ignite like coal in a firebox. No one noticed Spencer Hale step from the caboose of the morning freight, coat collar hiding irons freshly filed apart. He limped to the telegraph office, bribed the night operator with Klondike gold dust, and slid a screwdriver between 2 brass posts. Sparks snapped. The line to Seattle went dead with a soft hiss, and Spencer's smile returned, cold as slate. Evelyn swallowed the draft at midnight, heart hammering against calculated courage. Whitlock found her motionless at dawn, skin cool, lips pale. Grief twisted his usually rigid features. Still, fear of scandal moved faster than sorrow. By noon, church bells tolled across Blackwater, announcing the loss of the town's brightest bookseller. Snow thickened, muffling every footstep as neighbors brought dishes no one would eat. Jonah received the news late, carried on a gust through Bell's front door by Sheriff Pike. The moment stretched, brittle and echoing before shattering. Jonah bolted, boots skidding on ice, toward the hillside cemetery where a hurried funeral gathered beneath skeletal pines. He arrived as the first shovelful of earth thudded onto the coffin lid. In one reckless leap, he landed beside the grave, knocking the shovel from the gravedigger's grasp. Gasps rippled among the mourners. Whitlock stepped forward, voice trembling. "Jonah, stop this madness!" But madness owned him. He dropped to his knees, clawing frozen clods away until numb fingers bled. Pike grabbed his shoulders. Jonah shook free, shouting a single word, "Poisoned!" before the world tilted under the weight of disbelief and snow-blown grief. Then Spencer emerged from the crowd, wrists bandaged to mask cuff scars. "He's delirious," he declared. Authority curdled with triumph. Whitlock, seeing Spencer alive and free, understood debts had shifted hands again. In his eyes bloomed a terror deeper than grief. Night fell early, burial unfinished. Jonah sat in Bell's surgery, wrists bound in linen where he had fought the shovel's edge. Bell pressed a flask into his hand. "She may still breathe," the physician whispered. 12 hours, remember?" Hope flickered. "Then dig," Jonah begged. Bell shook his head. Sheriff posted guards. Unless a miracle arrives, she wakes alone, buried alive. Outside, gale winds snapped telegraph wires already broken by sabotage. Ice weighted them like ropes over a drowned ship. Messages from Seattle never came, and no one noticed because the town mourned too loudly to hear the silence on the line. At the stroke of midnight, a lantern bobbed through the blizzard toward the cemetery. Whitlock, coat flapping, carried a crowbar and his guilt. Spencer trailed him, pistol leveled. "Debts stay buried with her," Spencer hissed. "So will you." A blast of icy powder swallowed the gunshot that followed. Lantern glass shattered, plunging the hillside into darkness. Minutes later, Jonah crept from the trees, compass needle quivering in his palm as if sensing borrowed heartbeat beneath the snow. He found the coffin half unearthed, Whitlock's body slumped nearby, pulse faint but present. Spencer was gone, tracks scoured by wind. Jonah pried the lid free. Inside, Evelyn's lashes fluttered against candlelit shadows. Breath fogged the cramped air. She whispered his name as tears of relief melted across his cheeks like winter's quiet surrender to spring. Far below, in the telegraph office, the batteries finally sparked to life, repairing the line just long enough to spit out Jonah's original message. It clattered uselessly onto the floor, time-stamped 20 hours too late. Proof that some love stories hung not on words sent, but on hearts that refused to stop beating when the world declared them dead. Chapter 5. The Compass points nowhere. "Your brother vanished downriver at first light," Sheriff Pike warned, reins creaking as his horse sidestepped icy puddles. Jonah barely heard. He was too busy prying open his compass under the gray wash of dawn. The needle quivered, then went still, refusing every cardinal command. Evelyn noticed the change first. "That looks broken," she whispered. Jonah's jaw tightened. Spencer demagnetized it. No bearings, no direction, just like he wants us. They stood on the collapsing footbridge that linked Blackwater to the abandoned Marrow Orchard. Wind rattled frost-stiff branches above their heads. Petals of last summer's camellias lay fossilized beneath clear ice, mocking the season. Evelyn tugged Jonah's sleeve. "He fled with the ledger. If Spencer sells those tunnel rights, he controls every rail spur in the valley." Her breath left filaments of white in the air. Jonah pocketed the useless compass and met her gaze. "We take a page from your legend book. We chase the story, not the map." They hurried along the orchard path, snow crunching under worn boots. Past the tree line, the cliffs plunged into Blackwater Inlet, where winter tides heaved like an animal caught in a snare. Midway down the slope, a half-collapsed rail spur curved toward a dynamited tunnel. Gunnison's western portal, once the pride of Hale & Co., now a scar of rusted rails and loose spikes. Evelyn's lantern flickered in the draft exhaled by the hollow mountain. "He'll meet buyers here," she guessed. "No town gossips, no deputies, just see to swallow any proof." Jonah slipped a crowbar into his belt and tried not to picture Spencer with another pistol. Inside, darkness pressed close, smelling of salt, coal dust, and betrayal. Water dripped from the ceiling like a clock counting sins. They followed wet footprints toward a distant pinprick of orange light. Voices echoed. Spencer and two strangers arguing price. Evelyn strained to hear. "Forged pages," one buyer snarled. "Real ledger or no gold." Spencer's reply oozed confidence. "Proof waits in that compass. Float it here and you'll see." Jonah's stomach dropped. He felt the empty weight against his ribs where the compass should have been. Spencer must have lifted it while Jonah dug Evelyn from her grave. Evelyn caught his panic and squeezed his hand. "Let's rewrite his coordinates," she murmured, then stepped forward, lantern raised. "Looking for this?" Her voice rang bold through the cavern. 3 heads snapped toward her. Spencer's eyes widened, relief and calculation at war. "Cousin, hand it over and go home. I'm rescuing all of us." Jonah emerged beside her, crowbar gleaming. "Rescue? You sabotaged telegraph lines, faked ledgers, nearly buried us alive." Spencer's smile twisted. "Progress isn't polite, brother. Father taught us that." He extended a palm. "Compass." Evelyn nudged Jonah, who drew the brass circle from his coat. The buyers stepped closer, lamplight revealing sharkskin coats and Union Pacific signet rings. Spencer cracked the compass open. Inside lay folded vellum, bank seals unbroken. He raised it like a chalice. Authentic, now payment. Before gold could change hands, the tunnel trembled. Outside, a chunk of cliff collapsed into the inlet, sending a shockwave through stone. Rail ties groaned. A fissure split the track beneath Spencer's boots. The compass slipped, bounced once, and slid down the gap toward roaring surf visible through a new skylight of shattered rock. Spencer lunged, missed, and teetered on the edge. Evelyn shouted, but the buyers fled, coats flapping like startled crows. Jonah grabbed his brother's wrist. "Spence, let it go." Spencer stared at the compass tumbling into froth 30 feet below, ledger fluttering like a wounded gull. "Everything Father lost," his voice cracked. "I could fix it." A second rumble buckled the ledge. Jonah braced his feet, straining. Stone sheared away. Spencer tore free and plunged after the compass, disappearing into the spray. Silence followed, broken only by wind howling through fractured granite. Jonah collapsed, knuckles bleeding where stone had flayed them. Evelyn wrapped his shoulders, but he barely felt the warmth. Somewhere below, the inlet churned, indifferent to ambition or grief. Sheriff Pike's distant whistle echoed from the tunnel mouth, too late to matter. They climbed outside as snow began again, flakes melting the instant they hit sea spray damp skin. The tide receded, revealing shattered rail spikes scattered like fallen stars along the shore. Among them bobbed the compass, glass cracked yet afloat. Jonah waded knee-deep, waves numbing his legs, and retrieved it. Inside, the vellum was gone, ripped free in the maelstrom, leaving only the needle, now spinning in lazy circles, pointing everywhere and nowhere at once. Evelyn touched the casing. "Maybe it's free," she said softly. Jonah looked toward the horizon where Spencer's silhouette had vanished, swallowed by mist. For the first time since childhood, he felt unanchored yet unburdened. He shut the compass and slid it into Evelyn's pocket. "Let's let Blackwater's next chapter write itself," he whispered. Hand in hand, they followed the tide line back toward town, footprints already filling with snow behind them, as if the inlet itself insisted some paths should remain untracked, some loves uncharted, and some brothers remembered only by the echo of mistakes the sea was still trying to wash clean. Chapter 6. Tide Pool Constellations. The first pink edge of dawn brushed Blackwater Inlet, while fog still clung to the rocks like a secret unwilling to part with night. Evelyn stood barefoot on the wet sand, skirt hem dark and heavy, her breath smoking in thin ribbons as she scanned the low tide pools scattered across the shore. Jonah knelt beside the largest basin, his lantern casting warm ripples of gold over miniature gulfs where anemones opened like sleepy fireworks. He dipped a gloved hand into the frigid water and coaxed a shard of green glass from the silt. It was the compass lens, sea-smoothed, reflecting a pale sky freckled by retreating stars. Behind them, the lighthouse light winked out, conceding its vigil to the sun. "Every tide rewrites the shoreline," Jonah said, studying the shard as though it were a fallen planet. "So we map the shapes it leaves," Evelyn answered, sliding her fingers through his to anchor him in the present. They had spent the night scouring the beach for any sign of Spencer. They found nothing. No body, no ledger, only debris washed clean of names. Yet the silence felt less like loss and more like invitation. Each rush of waves sounded as if the sea were turning pages they had yet to read. Sheriff Pike approached, boot crunch echoing. Coast Guards sweeping farther south, he reported, voice soft for once. Storm will roll in by noon, time to head back. Jonah rose, brushed sand from his knees. He met the sheriff's gaze with quiet gratitude, and Pike, awkward with tenderness, tipped his hat before trudging away. Evelyn watched gulls wheel over the exposed reef. Spencer always chased horizons, she murmured. Maybe the sea finally gave him one big enough. Jonah wrapped his arms around her from behind. And maybe that horizon starts here, he said, for both of us. She leaned into him, feeling the steady percussion of his heart, remembering how close it had come to stopping in that frozen grave. They walked toward town along the railbed, now abandoned, rusted spikes glinting like stray constellations in the gravel. Halfway across the willow bridge, the air shifted. Salt gave way to cedar smoke and the slow bell of the rebuilt schoolhouse clock. Blackwater stirred awake. Fishermen mending nets, children sliding chalkboards outside the tiny academy, Dr. Bell hanging a fresh sign that read, "Vaccinations today, free of charge." The sight made Evelyn smile. After so much death-flavored fear, life asserted itself in small, generous acts. At noon, the library dedication drew nearly every soul in town to the ridge above the inlet. Boards from the old Marrow Pier framed its doorway, and beams hewn from the abandoned tunnel arched overhead. A skeleton of former rivalries reborn as sanctuary. Jonah placed the cracked compass lens in a walnut display case near the entrance, labeling it Chart of Unknown Futures. Evelyn arranged the bookstore's rescued volumes on freshly varnished shelves. Tides, myths, atlases. Stories that once separated families now stitched them together. Just before the ribbon cutting, a telegraph boy pushed through the crowd, uniform blotched with sea spray. He thrust a damp envelope at Jonah. No return address. Inside lay a rough map drawn in Spencer's angular hand, tracking an unmarked cove 50 miles down the coast. Beneath it a single sentence. Some treasures only reveal themselves when the needle spins free. Jonah folded the map without comment, but Evelyn caught the flicker of relief. Spencer lived, directionless perhaps, but alive. Thunder rumbled beyond the headland. The mayor cleared his throat, scissors poised, yet Jonah raised a hand for silence. He pulled Evelyn to the podium, fingers laced with hers, and spoke with the calm certainty of a man who had outlived every false compass. "We gathered because stories save us," he began, voice riding the wind to the last row. "They remind us that rails, tides, and bloodlines can bend. Today, we open a house for words, so that no message, no heart, is ever buried again." He turned, kissed Evelyn softly, and the crowd erupted, some cheering, some weeping, all changed. Rain arrived in curtains, drumming on the roof like hurried applause. Children dashed inside, squealing, as lightning stitched silver seams across dark clouds. Evelyn stayed on the threshold, palms upturned, letting the downpour erase soot and salt from her skin. Jonah joined her. Together they watched the storm wash the compass case clean, water beads turning the cracked glass into a new constellation. Later, when lamps glowed amber among cedar rafters and the hush of pages turning replaced thunder, Evelyn traced a fresh map on blank parchment. She marked a single star near the bottom margin and wrote beside it, "Here be second chances." Jonah added another, farther out, captioned "Stories Still Unspoken." between them stretched uncharted space wide enough for every tide yet to come. And in that quiet library on a raw Washington afternoon, two cartographers of the heart began drawing their forever, one tide pool constellation at a time.